All right, welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have PetVivo Holdings Inc. It trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol PETV and is an emerging biomedical device company currently focused on the manufacturing, commercialization, and licensing of innovative medical devices and therapeutic for our companion animals. Today, we have its CEO, John Lai. And remember, everyone, submit your questions for PetVivo right here through the webinar module. Happy to see you again, John. Welcome back.
Great seeing you, Anna.
All right, the floor is yours. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. So, John Lai, CEO of PetVivo Holdings, under the symbol PETV. There will be forward-looking statements in this presentation. And before I get into the company highlights, basically we have developed a protein particle matrix that mimics cartilage and tissue, but it has multiple applications within the companion animal space as well as eventually back into the human space. So the product that we have developed is addressing problem of osteoarthritis. The osteoarthritis market in the United States is about $4.4 billion, growing at about 7% a year annualized. The product name is called Spring with OsteoCushion technology. What it is a veterinary device that once you inject into any articulating joint, it will mimic the existing cartilage that used to be there, the cartilage that used to be there. The product is comprised of natural components and structure that you would find in cartilage. That's collagen, elastin, heparin are the base proteins. And we sell it to the veterinary doctors. That allows the veterinary doctors to derive revenue as well as increase traffic, but it offers the pet owner much better outcomes than the current therapies. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. There we go. And because we're a veterinary device, and we've been declared actually on the human side of the market as a medical device on the human market, we get a pretty much an exemption on the animal health side. So we do not have to go to the FDA for pre-market approval or clearance before commercially selling the product as a medical device. We have submitted our labeling and claims, which it's been over 3 years and they have not commented on it. And with the FDA, when they don't comment, it's good news, because when they have a problem, they comment right away. And we have a very seasoned, experienced management team and a very active board of directors. So the opportunity that presents ourselves is osteoarthritis, the $4.4 billion companion animal market growing at about 7% a year. Now that number, $4.4 billion, only represents dogs and horses, because our treatment right now is for dogs and horses. We will be bringing in a feline product for cats probably within 6 months. So that expands that TAM significantly. So osteoarthritis is basically bone-on-bone contact by the wearing away of the cartilage. And with that bone-on-bone contact, it causes inflammation and pain. In the United States, there are approximately 14 million dogs that have this condition and 1 million horses. And the problem worsens over time. It does not improve. And the opportunity that presents ourselves is based on the current solution that are treating osteoarthritis, the gold standard. Well, everyone's focused on symptoms. We're quite unique in the sense that we're looking at the cause of the problem, which is bone-on-bone contact. So the gold standard treatment right now is an NSAID. NSAIDs are used, but there's multiple issues with NSAIDs. There's GI tract bleeding, kidney, liver damage potential, as well as does nothing to slow down the degrading of the joint. And actually, I would argue it speeds up the process, because when a dog doesn't feel pain, it'll jump and run in situations where if it did feel pain, it would not do that. Also, there's an issue of compliance from the consumer. So the pet owner basically would have to give a pill once or twice a day. The next line of treatment is generally steroids or HA, hyaluronic acid. These work, but they're slow acting and they last for a very short duration. Usually an HA injection will last 30, and if you're lucky, you get to 60 days out of it. So it requires multiple treatments in a given year. So it requires compliance of the pet owner to bring the dog back to the veterinary doctor. Stem cell PRP, it requires blood draw, also painful tissue harvesting in certain situations. And once again, it's very time sensitive, very expensive, and requires multiple treatments in a given year. So what we believe is the optimal solution, or the disruptive solution to treating OA, is Spryng with the osteocushion technology. The particles are basically biocompatible with brishes, and it does pretty much the same function that cartilage would. The components, as I said before, it's all natural, collagen, elastin, and heparin, or the base protein materials. So the injection is what is called an intra-articular injection. It's not a very complex type of injection. And you can actually go to YouTube and punch an intra-articular injection for dogs or horses. And there's a vet that actually demonstrates injection of each of the joints, how to do it. In our case studies, our product on a single injection has lasted at least 12 months or longer. And we're comfortable saying 12 months because we did do a human study, 145 patients, using the same particles for a different application that we tracked the humans for a year. So with the use of this, we have found that there's a great minimization or the elimination of the use of NSAIDs once the Spryng particles are injected. So it's a very effective, economical solution for treating OA. Spryng with osteocushion technology, you look at the image, you see how we sell the product and how it's delivered. We provide a 2 cc syringe, and it's like a polymer or an epoxy that gets injected into the synovial fluid sac where cartilage used to exist. Once this particle gets injected in, think of it as a series of wet sponges that are injected into the joint area, and it mimics the cartilage that used to be there. But on top of that, the materials are really wet. So when the dog runs or jumps, it literally is moving the particles around, lubricating the joint and keeping the joint cool, exactly what cartilage should be doing. And we talked about the 145 human FDA clinical trial as a dermal filler using the same particles. And if you look, this PowerPoint's actually in the investor section of our website. It's the identical presentation. You can see the clinicaltrials.gov and punch in that number. You can actually see the results. We compared very well to Restylane, which is the gold standard for treating as a dermal filler. And we have a very strong IP portfolio and actually very deep product pipeline. We have 9 US patents and 12 foreign patents and probably around 19 patents that are pending. So Spryng is unique in the sense that the mechanism of action is purely mechanical. So if you look at the image on top, the bone-on-bone contact represents osteoarthritis. You see the red, which is inflammation and pain. And then underneath, you see that after Spryng has been injected into the joint, it forms a particle matrix that's actually scaffolding. And it acts very much like, as I described, as the wet sponge. So the spongy particle, as stated before, lubricates the joint. It assembles the natural, it resembles the natural cartilage that's there. And we've had rabbit studies as well as pig studies, so on, to show that there was zero adverse claim. And actually 145 humans, we had zero adverse claim, no autoimmune response. And that's how we got the human device designation as a medical device, is when they looked at all that, the FDA, we argued that it had to fall under the device category, and they agreed. Spryng, canine success story, hope. So beyond just treating osteoarthritis, we have found that the particles are very effective in treating other joint defects. So Hope was a 9-month-old golden doodle, came to us with a congenital hip defect. The vet didn't want to perform surgery at that time because he thought she would grow more. And so we injected Spring into Hope, and literally 3 months later, 3 weeks, I'm sorry, the dog basically started to run to the form where you couldn't tell it had a birth defect. So the birth defect basically didn't allow usage of his left rear hind leg, and the right leg overcompensated, so it was much bigger. So it took a little while for the muscular issues to be resolved, and the product actually lasted 7 years within Hope. And we have had similar results like that when it comes to joint issues. We had another dog named Kona, which belonged to Dr. Larson, who was head of orthopedic surgery at Stanford University. He injected his dog with a birth defect, and it's gone 5.5 years on the injection. So we've got some really good success case studies. Equine success story, Fender Bender. So Fender Bender is a racehorse that was claimed by the owner for $3,000 in June of 2020. He wanted to focus on identifying a horse that had pretty good race times, but then suffered a lameness injury and never really recovered. So the trap vet injected in 4 different areas of Fender Bender in August 2020, and they moved him up from a $3,000 claiming race to a $7,500 claiming race, where the Fender Bender got a terrible start out of the gates. And you can see the race actually on our website, and gave a 10-length lead to the other horses, but it managed to capture all the other horses and win the race. But on top of that, the trainer said to me, not only did Fender Bender run faster, the biggest thing for her was the recovery time between races. So Fender Bender pre-spring was taking 2.5 weeks before it could train for the next race. Now it's 2 to 3 days before the next race. So Fender Bender is able to run in a lot more races, which meaning a lot more income for the owner. Spring's competitive distinction or disruptive distinction is that it's focused on the affliction and not the symptoms. It's an intra-articular injection. It's purely a mechanical function, while all the competitors are focused on treating the symptoms with biologic or pharmaceutical, and each one of those has multiple side effect potentials. Price cost advantage definitely goes to Spring. Ease of application, we can inject multiple joints at the same time, like in the case of Fender Bender, 4 different joints. It's sold exclusively to the vet clinics, which really allows them to really enhance their margins. We have treated over 100 dogs and horses successfully, where there was tangible improvement in the performance of the pet. So if we look at the spectrum of treatments that exist for osteoarthritis, joint replacement being the most invasive and most intrusive and dramatic for the pet owner as well as the dog. Deal of recovery time, and it's very expensive. So everything left of that is focused on temporary relief, focused on treating the symptoms, and requires compliance of the consumer multiple times a year, if not on a daily basis, in the sense of NSAIDs. So you look at the annual cost, and then you look at Spring, excuse me. So our injection basically augments and protects the joint. We see pretty much tangible improvement of the dog within 48 hours. And we have an excellent safety profile from the human study, and very minimally invasive. And it's typically once a year, but we have seen it last well beyond a year. And the cost is between $500 and $700. Now, also, we're seeing pet insurance cover the injection. Now, when we look at the joint replacement market, Dr. Stern, who's one of our advisory vets, he's a surgeon out of San Francisco, he's been injecting the dogs after TPO surgery and finding the recovery time is much quicker. It stabilizes the joint, It allows the dog to recover much faster. But on top of that, there's an incident that on a bilateral basis or the opposing joint, the dog will require surgery of that opposing joint or the bilateral joint literally within the first 2 years. 80% of the dogs require that. He's been injecting the bilateral joint and having great success with that. So we feel there are many applications, one from a prophylactic all the way to an extension of joint life. So I would argue strictly right to the left of that, joint replacement, there should be a category for joint life extension. I believe that if we approach, certain orthopedic surgeons and say right before you're going to recommend surgery, you should try using spring. We believe the spring would be able to allow the joint not to be replaced, so there's not as traumatic, and also from a cost standpoint, it's a major cost savings to the pet owner. Production strategy. So with all this great success, we have kept the vets pretty quiet. They haven't published anything or talked about it at the trade conferences. Now we're going to let them do that because we have a production facility that we have put together and it's doing large-scale production. So we did this facility to meet very high human standards of medical device production. So it's an ISO 5, 7, and 8. We weren't required to do that for companion animals or in the animal side of the FDA. So we have done 1,000-unit batch runs. The batch runs take about 8 days, but we can run concurrent batch runs, so you can really expand the production process. And within 6 months, each batch run will be 5,000 units. So that current facility can do 500,000 syringes a year, which would represent about top-line revenue, about 120 million. Now, what we did here was to make this extremely scalable type facility. We can duplicate that facility in about 120 days and $200,000. So you can imagine the CapEx, return on CapEx is significant. We have a very deep, comprehensive IP portfolio, 9 US patents, 12 foreign patents, very broad, clean language in the patents. We know that by looking at the citations that the examiner at the patent office, as well as the applicant's attorneys, cite us over 400 times in patent filings. But on top of that, we have very strong protocols put in place to protect our trade secrets. Trade secrets many times are more valuable than the patents from the standpoint there is a lot of detail manufacturing that's unique to us that other companies or other processors don't use, and that gives us that competitive edge. Market overview, companion animals, veterinary. So U.S. pet spend increased in 2019 from 97.1 billion to 103.6 billion in 2020. The market basically has grown at 5.5% a year annualized for the last 5 years, very recession-proof. We have a lot of demographic drivers that's going to continue this type of growth rate. If you look at people, there are less and less people are getting married, less and less people are having children, so their pets become their children. It's called a humanization of the pet into the family unit, where they're going to spend whatever it takes to improve the quality of life of the animal. We're seeing that across the board. Vet care and products is the leading driver of that type of growth. It represents 30% of pet spend today, 29.3 billion in 2019, 31.4 billion in 2020. Now, for OA, actually, the forecast for most analysts are at least 7% growth a year. So 68% of all households own a pet, 63.4 million dogs, 7.2 million horses. This is all U.S. numbers. And as we introduce the cat product, probably within 6 months, it opens us up to, the 42.7 million cats. So the TAM is greatly expanded. Here's a very significant number. This gives us a very good clue of the humanization aspect. So if you look at what a consumer was willing to spend before he would stop treatment for a dog. In 2012, it was $1,700. In 2020, it's $10,700. Pet insurance is a rapid growing market. It's averaged 23.4% annual growth for the last 5 years. It still only represents it's under 4% of the pet population. In 2016, 1.8 million pets had pet insurance. In 2020, 3.45 million pets have pet insurance. And as I stated before, we're finding our product, because it's a medical device, is getting reimbursement. Now, the market is very ripe for a disruptive, effective therapy. Probably for the last 15 years, everyone's focused on creating a better NSAID, that gives you better efficacy in pain management, but once again, it's focused on symptoms with less side effects. And the other avenue they've been approaching is to get a better better efficacy out of stem cells. No one's really approached addressing the issue of bone-on-bone contact. That's where we come in. Our product is focused on creating the cushion and protection between the joints. So early on, I talked about multiple applications using our osteocushion particles, spring particles. The first 5 products here does not require any FDA clearance, and it's basically ready to go to commercialization. The first 2 is in commercialization stage, the canine spring, equine spring. The feline spring, I said, we're probably within 6 months. Digital cushion lameness for equine. Dr. Tracy Turner, who was on our advisory board, he's on the U.S. Olympic team, also on the International Equestrian Association as a surgeon, and he was the former head of large animal surgery at the University of Minnesota. He's been treating this problem, and currently there is no treatment. What it is basically bone-on-bone contact that exists between the bone joint and the hoof. There's a padding there. That padding collapses. They basically put the horse down because there is no treatment. He's been rebuilding that padding in horses probably for 5 years, and we've had very good success there. So we're excited for him to start publishing paperwork on that. And then also urinary incontinence for canine, which is a big problem. So we were funded by NIH DOD, and they had us do a lot of clinical trials on the human side. But one of the trials we did was urinary incontinence using pigs. We were able to inject our particles into the sphincter muscle area, and it basically hardened or strengthened the muscle by 40%, which basically solved the urinary incontinence issue. Mucoadhesive device, it's a different category of patents and products that we have there. What it is, basically a drug delivery or agent delivery, over-the-counter agents. So it's a wafer that you can put in the rooftop of your mouth, delivered through the mucosal membrane, delivering agents or biologics into the body at 10x the bioavailability. Classic example I use is CBD oil for dogs. A dog that's barking out of control, CBD oil seems to work effectively there in 6 to 10 drops. We can basically get the same results with a single drop, putting it in a wafer and going right into the bloodstream versus having product go through the gastrointestinal tract, which many humans and animals have issues with. So that's an interesting product in our pipeline. Management team, since we gone on NASDAQ and did the capital raise August 13th, we have added a Chief Operating Officer, Randy Meyer. He was CEO of Taxel Medical. Taxel went from 10 million to 1.6 billion trading on NASDAQ. They're a medical device manufacturer, and he basically built their sales and operational team while he was there. We added John Dolan, who's VP of Business Development. When he was attorney at Ferguson Byron, he basically dealt in the M&A and partnership licensing agreements for companies like Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson. He was one of the senior partners on that. Josh Wilhelm joined us September 1st. He's Director of Manufacturing. He has a long history of doing large-scale manufacturing. in biomaterials, medical device area. He's worked for Medtronic, Schultz Diabetes Institute, Boston Scientific. Mark Middleton, who's our National Director of Sales. He was president of Animal Health International. He took that to about 800 million in revenues over 35 years of sales experience. So he's putting together our sales team. Russ Sickle, Director of Marketing. He spent, I think, over 20 years at Zoetis, which was Pfizer Animal Health. Birmingham Ingelheim, which is the second largest animal health company in the world, out of Germany. He was a senior marketing person there. And Ann Zieser, who is our senior technical veterinarian, she's the interface that helps the salespeople answer questions of veterinary doctors. She was former president of the Wisconsin Veterinary Medical Association, on the board of American Veterinary Medical Association. Greg Cash, who's our chairman, he's actually working in business development now with the marketing and sales. He used to be at Medtronic, where he handled the CRM division, which was the fastest growing division for cardiac rhythm management. And he handled marketing of all of Asia. And he was a marketing role at Boston Scientific and in a sales role at US Surgical. So we've got a very strong seasoned management team and board of directors. Scott Johnson, who's on our board, but he's serving as a quality control, quality assurance person for us. We've hired him in that role. He did that at Boston Scientific, Simon Life, and company, his own company called Stratego. He did that for Zimmer Biomet and Philips Medical recently, where he would go in and do what an FDA audit would be, and also describe what the shortfalls are to upper management. And then we have very good board of advisory board. Dr. Tracy Turner, I talked about, University of Minnesota. Dr. Brad Gordon used to be on the Minnesota Racing Commission, and he's a track vet now at Prairie Metals down in Iowa. He's injected the most racehorses of any of the vets. He's over 46 racehorses, had very good success. And we talked about Dr. Stern as a surgeon. So he has a unique background where he got his MBA, formed a veterinary device company, and sold to veterinary doctors. And then he sold his business and decided to become a surgical vet. So he gives us very good insight. The growth drivers, we're going to be adding a total of 9 sales reps over the next 12 months. These are very seasoned sales reps that have a very deep Rolodex of veterinary doctors that they have been calling on for many years. KOLs, and KOLs is key opinion leaders like Stern, Turner. We have 50 vets right now using the product as basically word of mouth before we started the marketing drive. This will help adoptions when these veterinary doctors can do podium presentations, attract distributors, and so on. We can increase market awareness, trade shows, white papers, digital outreach as a call to action to the consumers to contact their vets. We have a clinical study going at Colorado State. It's not an FDA study, it's purely a marketing study, so it'll get done relatively soon. And we're very confident the data will be expanding internationally, expanding to other species like cats, and then eventually rolling back into the human market. So the investment highlights or thesis of PetVivo, we got a very large TAM and growing at 7%. Increasing humanization of companion animals will help drive the amount of spend. Spring is unique and optimal solution that's very disruptive, where consumers can see instant gratification and outcome, because we are a society where we want to see instant gratification. And literally after 48 hours of Spring being injected, you'll see a tremendous improvement in mobility. Vet exclusive, great margins, cost-effective solution for pet owners, and 40% of the capital raise is going to be focused on sales and marketing, because we basically have very minimized FDA risks. Scaling is not an issue for us, and we can scale at a very high gross profit margin or very high margins. It's going to be north of 70%. And we have a strong IP portfolio and international and domestic. that concludes the formal portion. We'll open up the Q&A.
Thank you, John. We do have some questions for you. Lots of questions, by the way. Let's just start at the top. All right. Lenny Clark wants to know, you recently achieved a major milestone for PetVivo with your mid-August NASDAQ uplisting and the closing of significant financing. You also have a NASDAQ seasoned CFO who joined the company in April. How does this position the company for the next couple of years?
So not only the CFO, we have, Randy Meyer was the CEO of Taxo Medical. And my CFO actually functioned also as Chief Operating Officer at Taxo. So he has a history, and he beat street estimates 11 straight quarters, which is very hard to do. So if you look at the background of the management team and the board of directors, we have very successful record of implementing medical devices into the market for humans as well as animals. So we feel very comfortable, and the outlook's going to be very strong that we're going to be able to grab market share with a disruptive product like this. So we're very optimistic, and if you look at the Form 4s that we have filed, management continues to buy the stock and take stock, majority of our compensation in stock.
Thank you for that. Austin Bailey wants to know, what's your plan to get every vet to recommend your product? And are they incentivized in any way?
So it just like any disruptive technology on the human side, it just takes time. In the human side, it's 3 to 5 years before you get meaningful traction. In the companion animal side, I believe it's going to be much faster because we're dealing with a product that you see instant gratification, instant improvement in mobility, and it lasts. It's not like, we do the injection and 30 days later, hey, you got to come back in for an injection. It basically improves over the first few months because it's forming a scaffolding in its base material. So we feel adoption is going to be much quicker, and we're going to grab significant market share over the next 3 to 5 years.
Hallie Webster wants to know, are there any treatments for human afflictions in PetVivo's future?
So keep in mind, we were funded by the Department of Defense and NIH in regenerative medicine and drug delivery. All of our research is done on the human side. So they were focused on humans until I joined the company. I said, with all this data, we're going to animals because I don't have to deal with the FDA and the animal side with all the data. So we will eventually come back into the human side of the market.
Anthony Fitzgerald wants to know, is the company growing organically or open to acquisitions?
Most likely it's going to grow organically. So it's a couple of prone approach. So if you take a look at the walking approach, we're focused on our sales team with their deep Rolodex and relationships. And then as the Colorado State study and other studies get completed, we will be able to go into the big corporate accounts like Mars, which used to be Veterinary Council Clinics of America, VCA. Then Mars bought them out. So there's been tons of roll-ups. So once you get the first corporate account, you're going to be able to land multiple.
Well, John, we have a lot more questions for you, but we are out of time. So you're just going to have to come back on and give us some more updates. Thank you so much for this presentation.
Sure. Thank you. And it was a pleasure to be on with you.
All right. Okay, everyone, please stay with us as we transition to the next presenter.